This video is for the men who say not all men, because look, you are technically correct in that if we look at the population of men, there are men who don't commit violence against women, and then it is a small minority of men who do. You are thinking of this wrong. You're missing a really important piece because it's not just that you are either one of these things or you're the other. A better way to think of it is as a continuum, where at the very top, we have the mass offenders, the serial offenders, sort of the worst of the worst. And yeah, most men are not that. And then there are also men who are one-time offenders. They still commit acts of violence against women, but not over and over again, not repeatedly. Both of these types of men would fall into that category of men who commit violence against women, but clearly they're not the same. And there are also plenty of men in the middle between them. But you have to understand that you also might fall into the category where, like, yeah, you don't commit acts of violence against women, but you do things that actively encourage offenders. You make jokes about it. When a friend of yours says, like, hey, I hooked up with this chick who was really drunk last night, you give them a high five. That is actively encouraging offenders to either offend again or to continue to offend. And you are part of the problem, even though you're not part of that category of men who commit acts of violence against women. Below that, we have the men who just ignore the offenders completely. Someone makes a sexist joke, they tell you about something bad that they've done, something that puts them in that red category, and you just sort of brush it off. You don't make a big deal of it. You ignore the fact that those offenders exist and continue to offend. And yeah, that's not actively encouraging them to continue to offend, but it's implicitly saying that what they did is okay, and it's not. Then there are plenty of men who are just ignorant to the fact that this is a big problem for women. They don't understand just how big of a problem, just how many women experience violence on a basically daily basis. And I would argue that they're part of the problem too. Next up, we have men who they're not ignorant to the problems of women, but they do take steps to actively avoid the men who are. They have a friend who tells them about something they did, and they said, you know what, I'm not going to hang out with this guy anymore. He's a problem. He's not a good guy. I'm not going to be friends with him. That's at least a step in the right direction. But if you're not actively discouraging that person from doing those things again, they might take your break of contact with them again as implicit encouragement to continue doing what they're doing. So, really, the only men that women see as helping to solve this problem are the ones who are actively taking steps to stop offenders. And if you're doing that in private, if you're pulling your buddy aside and talking to him one on one, there's no way that women are going to know that you're doing that. So, it's really only the men who are doing that publicly who women are going to look at as not part of the problem. And one other very important piece to this is that the distribution of men is not just a flat straight line like this. Like basically everything else, it's a bell curve. So yes, it's a very small minority of men who are really, really terrible, but there are a lot more men who do bad things, but not super often, but are still actively causing harm. And then there's this big middle piece where most men are still encouraging offenders to offend, even though they're not actually doing any of the offending themselves. It's through their action or inaction. They are explicitly or implicitly encouraging men who do commit violence to continue to commit violence. And again, these men, at least from the perspective of women, they are part of the problem too.